Well, good morning. Welcome to the 2025 Joint Legislative Forum. It's great to see so many people here. Folks want to go ahead and get seated? So welcome to Arlington and the campus of George Mason University. So my name is Kate Mattice, and I'm the Executive Director of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. I am so honored to be here once again at a fantastic set of folks in the audience, and we do also have a fantastic program planned for you this morning. This event, while I'm with Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, this is something that we work very closely with our colleagues at the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, as well as the Virginia Railway Express. So we are really delighted to have all of you here this morning. And again, there's so many familiar faces in the crowd. I have to tell you, so this is actually our 10th annual Joint Legislative Forum. And when we first did this 10 years ago, and I see my predecessor, Kelly Coyner, here, we were in a very small little conference room at a hotel in Springfield. I think we did have people standing room only, but nothing like the over 200 people that we have here this morning RSVP'd. And so this is just absolutely fantastic. It really does show how important the issue of sustainable public transit is for our region and how it moves our economy. And the fact that we have so many people here, you understand sort of the pressing issues that we have right now. I know I could save this for the end of the program, but I do not want to get lost. There's a lot of work that goes into this type of event. And in particular, I want to have a little shout out and wave from all of the staff from NVTC particularly, but I know we also had wonderful support from VRE and PRTC. Please wave your hands if you worked on this, and please thank them right now. In particular, I want to do a big thank you to Heneveva and Tenley in the back corner who really put all of this together. So again, we are always happy to see so many of you and so many elected officials who are here in the room. I know that I will screw up if I have a list and I read it and I miss somebody or what have you. So what I'm going to do is do some acknowledgments in sort of groups of folks. So first of all, for our members of the General Assembly, if you could stand up and be recognized. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I know we have a number of elected leaders from our city and county governments. Please go ahead, stand up and be recognized. I think we may have some staff from our congressional delegation here. You can go ahead and stand up and be recognized. Thank you. And I also think we have some staff from both the state and federal government supporting public transit. Why don't you go ahead and get recognized? I know I saw some people. Thank you. Fantastic, fantastic. So again, we are absolutely delighted that everybody is here, and we really do hope that you walk out with a call for action to the importance of investing in a long-term strategy for our public transit systems. So the event, again, is made possible through NVTC's partnership with PRTC and the VRE, and so thank you. We have some fantastic booths around the table from our partners, and many of the transit agencies. So I know many of you had a chance to go ahead of time, but after the event, please go visit them. There's lots of cool swag and fun stuff. And you can also have a conversation about the great work that they do. But I do encourage you, both sides of the room, we have folks over here as well as over here. So please go ahead and take a look at that. And the other thing I wanted to highlight, and I know we've had some information up on the screen, but at your seat is really attempted to be a nice fine point of why it matters to invest in public transit here in Northern Virginia. What we're talking about is more than 2 million people are moving on public transit here in Northern Virginia every single week. And that number is growing. That's somewhat of a dynamic number. It was only 1.7 about 6-8 months ago. But the other thing, of course, and I think everybody knows we've done, hopefully, a really good job of getting that out, there's an economic value to the fact that we can move so many people. And that economic value to the Commonwealth of Virginia is $1.5 billion a year in sales and income tax revenue. And that's revenue that's being used throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. So again, what we do to invest in public transit here in Northern Virginia is really about something that benefits the Commonwealth as a whole. So the other thing I did want to highlight to you is we also wanted to make sure that you knew we are having a reception down in Richmond on Thursday, February 5th. So there's some flyers around for that as well. We do hope that folks who are down in Richmond at that time, it happens to also be VML Local Government Day. And so we'll be having a reception down there. So we definitely encourage folks to come by and visit and talk more transit. So again, thanks for coming. And at this point, I have the honor of turning the mic over to the PRTC chair and Prince William County, I'm going to get this right at some point, NABSCO. And you know, I actually knew that until this moment, and then all of a sudden I stumbled. But anyway, District Supervisor Victor Angry to kick things off.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hey, did this year go by fast? We're back here again already. So as you heard, I'm Victor Angry. I'm your PRTC chair and a member of the Prince William Board of County Supervisors. PRTC is the operator of OmniRide, an amazing transit operator that serves people in and around Prince William County. We offer local service and commuter bus service as well as neighborhood microtransit services that help people in our community and get people off our regional highways, which helps everyone. OmniRide bus ridership in Northern Virginia doubled between January and March of 2025. OmniRide is getting so many Virginians to and from work each day. Our commuter buses are all over the DMV, and people recognize our great swirl logo, right? All right. Today, you'll hear a lot of good news of Northern Virginia Transit. We are excelling, we are innovating, and we are winning. And most importantly, we are providing people across the region with safe, reliable, efficient service. A group of transit leaders who are operating our Nova Transit agencies are going to share what's working for them as well as some of our challenges that we all face. You'll also hear about Northern Virginia's transit funding needs. You'll hear about DMVMoves and SJ28, two major efforts to identify sustainable long-term funding for our regional transit providers so that we can continue to provide excellent service and plan for the future. I'm also excited to welcome our special guest, Kate Crystal, CEO of Tyson's Community Alliance, who will speak to the importance of transit and connecting people and communities and helping our local buses and our economy thrive. The organizers have put together a fantastic lineup for today, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue, so let's get started.
Thank you so much, Chair Angry, for once again another spirited welcoming to our event. So now I'd like to pass the microphone over to Falls Church Council member and NVTC Chair, Mr. Dave Snyder. Chair Snyder has the distinction of being one of NVTC's longest serving board members at 31 years. And he is serving as NVTC, he has served as NVTC's chair a record of 4 times. So we are delighted to have you up here to do a special introduction to our guest speaker.
Thanks so much, Kate. And as Kate is used to this, I'll probably go off script for just 1 or 2 minutes. This past year has really been a momentous year for NVTC and the entire region. This year, with the endorsement of SJ28 and DMVMoves, and I think we were the first major organization to do so, we laid the foundation for this region's transportation future, and a very bright one indeed. So it's a challenge to each and every one of us in this room and folks that we don't even know at this point to build on the foundation that we laid this year at NVTC, PRTC, and otherwise throughout this region through DMVMoves and SJ28. So I'd like a round of applause for everyone who's been involved in that effort. We also, with VRE, laid the foundation for VRE evolving into one of the major players and parts of not only the Virginia railroad system, but the national railroad system. So congratulations to everyone at VRE for really forward thinking. And again, another foundation that we laid this year. So a big thank you to Kate, to the staff, first rate, absolutely world class, and everyone involved in those efforts. Now, back on the script. So it's, my pleasure and frankly honor to introduce Katie Crystal. Katie is one of these unique, and I served with her as a public official, and I know she's carrying that forward into the private sector. She's one of those unique people that brings new ideas, energy, and hard work to what she does, and she certainly did that as a member of NVTC. So Katie has been recognized by the Virginia Transit Association and the Greater Washington Clean Cities Coalition. She was also named one of the 100 people to meet in business by Virginia Business Magazine. So let me just end this introduction with this. Katie represents in many ways the future of transportation. She worked really hard on the Arlington County Board and a member of NVTC. And frankly, as a neighbor of Tyson's Corner, I hope that we'll be working together rather than opposite sides, because I'm not sure I'd win that one. So Katie, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Councilmember Snyder. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to NVTC and PRTC for convening us for such an important conversation. And thank you to everyone here for your leadership and commitment to this critical issue for the future of our region. I'd like to begin with a fact about which you may not be aware, which is that as of the fourth quarter of 2025, transit in Northern Virginia is cool again. I know it may seem counterintuitive or unlikely, but somewhere between record ridership numbers on the 66 and 95 bus corridors or new microtransit services rolling out in PRTC jurisdictions and VRE celebrating its 1 millionth rider in October, or WMATA's brilliant social media team making Instagram reels that reach 5 million viral views, Northern Virginia transit riders are starting to take pride once again in how we get around. Truly, transit has always been greater than moving people from point A to point B. It provides a blueprint for the future that we want. The plans on which we can build a better quality of life, improve career opportunities and connections to one another, and grow the economic competitiveness and the economic sustainability of our Northern Virginia communities and of our Commonwealth as a whole. Tyson's, where my colleagues and I have the privilege of coordinating with public sector and private sector and residents all together, illustrates the centrality of transit to all of these other priorities. As the DMV's largest employment center outside of downtown DC, Tyson's is in the middle of a transformation from suburban office parks into a true mixed-use downtown. The transformation is rooted into a Fairfax County Board adopted comprehensive plan that is all built around 4 Silver Line transit stations. And that has catalyzed a shift into high-density transit-oriented development. As of the beginning of this year, 2025, 86% of the new development in Tyson's has all occurred within a half mile of those transit stations. That's exceeded expectations. And it's advanced the plan's vision of 200,000 jobs and 100,000 residents, all without adding to single occupancy vehicle traffic. I tell Tyson's story because it is emblematic of a story that has repeated throughout our region. Arlington, where we are this morning, has more mature metro corridors, and those metro corridors comprise, for example, only 11% of the county's land, but half of its tax base. DMV-wide, metro rail station areas account for only 3% of the land, but 40% of the jobs. Why? Because while there is no such thing as a silver bullet in community planning, mixed use and transit-oriented development is about as close to one as we've got. People want to be near other people. They want to be able to walk from where they live to their favorite coffee shop. They want to be able to get a sandwich in the middle of their workday without having to get back in their car. And money and investment follows those preferences. We're challenged throughout Northern Virginia by high rates of vacancy in our commercial office markets. But one term that you'll hear again and again is flight to quality, or the dynamic by which the demand for the highest quality, sometimes called trophy office markets,
buildings is increasing, and by some measures even outstripping the demand, or excuse me, our regional supply. And one thing that those trophy office buildings all have in common is proximity to transit. Employers want to know when they invest in a new headquarters or office space that they will be able to recruit and retain the best talent. And transit, and especially the type of active transportation networks that high-capacity transit supports, like busy sidewalks or lively bike lanes or well-used transit networks, is really essential to helping get people back into the office. Here's a hill that I will die on when it comes to return to office, which is a term we all became intimately familiar with after the pandemic. People don't hate being in their workplaces. They hate their long commutes. In the post-pandemic years, around 2023, before the current wave of RTO mandates, we learned something really important about workers' preferences. My organization, the TCA, ran a local analysis that found an even more acute Northern Virginia version of a phenomenon that had been documented in major metro areas across the country. While employees who lived more than 10 miles away from work were returning to those workplaces at less than half their pre-pandemic levels, those who lived within 2 miles, call it walk, bike, or very easy bus distance, were at or even exceeding pre-pandemic levels back in their workplace. So here's the so what of all that economic development that transit supports. More fiscally sustainable state and local budgets, for one. Every dollar that the Commonwealth invests in transit in Northern Virginia generates an additional $1.60 in statewide revenue, a 160% return on investment. That's funding that supports all of our other priorities, from education to public safety and parks. And transit and the kind of quality jobs and diverse housing and businesses and activated neighborhoods that transit sustains also improves quality of life for riders and non-riders alike. Did you know, for example, that because transit is 20 times safer than driving a car, the transit is estimated to save our region 2,500 injuries and nearly 30 deaths every year? Or that transit in our region reduces greenhouse gas equivalents of 13.5 million gallons of gas. There are 2.1 million weekly riders of WMATA VRE and our local bus operators every week. But there are even more Northern Virginians who will benefit from safer and cleaner and more sustainable communities, even if they never swipe a fare card or board a bus. These are no doubt uncertain times for our regional economy, with terminations of federal leases and federal and contractor job losses and tariff and immigration effects, compounding longstanding concerns about a slowing commercial real estate market. And the human cost of those economic effects are felt daily by our neighbors. Even those who haven't been impacted by job losses are experiencing the acute pain of costs of living that have been rising in Northern Virginia for far too long. But at a time of such uncertainty for 1 month to the next, I find it reassuring to think in terms of the time horizons of the long-range plans on which so many of you are working. What will Northern Virginia need to thrive when the Long Bridge expansion is complete in 2030? By the end of the time horizon of NVTA's transaction plan in 2045, at the conclusion of VRE's system plan 2050, or when it celebrates its 2 or 5th millionth rider. I am confident that the answer is transit-oriented communities that are rich in ways to get around, with housing choices and job opportunities for diverse populations. And how we invest in our transit systems today determines whether or not we are building that future for the next generation of families, of seniors, of professionals, of entrepreneurs, of Northern Virginians of all stripes. I am delighted now to hand you over to the professionals who will tell us what they are working on to build that future with us. Thank you again for the opportunity, and happiest of holidays.
Thank you so much, Katie. As we all know, you've come through understanding our local governments, our regional governments, and now have that regional business perspective. It is fantastic to have you here. So now we do is, as Katie mentioned, we are transitioning this over to our transit professionals. And so our transit leaders have been a cornerstone of this event for the last 10 years. They are the folks who are leading our local transit systems, and they really do have a unique perspective on the value of transit to Northern Virginia, including what it takes to maintain, what needs to happen, planning, funding, innovating, what have you. So we do have a lot of focus and a lot of conversation about what we have here in Arlington. I'm very excited that we've got Pierre Hollerman from Arlington Transit, who's going to be joining us. We also have Randy Clark from Metro, as well as Bob Schneider from OmniRide. So again, we're talking a lot about Northern Virginia, but Northern Virginia for us is also going all the way down to Spotsylvania. And finally, we have Mark Schofield, who is fantastically pinch hitting for Dallas Richards, who had an Amtrak challenge getting here. All transit, but anyway, and so Mark Schofield's going to be joining us. So we are very excited to have our moderator, Rachel Weiner, from the Transportation Reporter from the Washington Post, is going to be leading this. So I'm going to invite everybody to come up and find your place.
Glad you didn't blame it on me this morning.
Hello, there we go, that's better. Thank you for joining us today. I want to start off by asking each of you for an update on your agencies. How's it going? What are your biggest successes in the last year and daunting challenges for the year ahead?
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. And I will say I apologize if you got caught in a little single tracking. We did have a rail break out at East Falls this morning. This kind of weather, it happens, but the system works safely, and that's what it's all about, right? So, well, listen, a couple things to start off. Thanks, Kate, for having me as always. Congratulations, another great event. Hard to follow Katie Crystal with that. That was like, you know, that spoke all the truth there, right? But I would say, listen, that we've had a fantastic year, and you have great years when you have great partners. And I see so many of our partners in the room that, you know, I want to acknowledge and just thank. We got, and the delegation, and I can't wait to work in the next legislative session between senator and delegate next to us right here, just fantastic champions, Adam Eben, really for the SJ work, and Mark Sickles for all of his work on DMVMoves. We're just really look forward to working with you, both of you. Nick Donahue is the new secretary. You know, Clark Mercer has been just an incredible partner. I saw Jack in the room. There's probably other people as well that have been working on this. I don't know, Brian Hill's here. Just all of this, the whole region has pulled together in the last year, and to me, that's been the biggest success. So we'll talk about ridership and all this other kind of stuff, but the real success is everyone kind of working together and build, and really, as Katie said, focusing on the future. Just a couple metrics that we feel really good about. We've led the country in ridership growth for the second straight year, outpacing everyone in the country. Reliability numbers are up very, very high, highest in years. We are 2 weeks away from closing to have the lowest crime year ever in the history of Metro. And we won APTA Agency of the Year, so rated the best transit agency in North America this year. So feeling really proud of what we've accomplished this year. Tons of work. There we go. Tons of work to always do. That's the thing. This thing never ends. But you know, the 13,000 colleagues of mine, whether it's cold weather like last night, or 4th of July, or inauguration, or you name it, are out working hard every day, and I'm just really proud and thankful for them. The challenges are legit for us on the financial end, and I know you'll probably spend some more time later talking about DMVMoves, but that is really the key to the whole future. If we do not get that resolved, we are going to have a massive fiscal cliff coming in a couple of years. The money that came in 2018, 2019 was incredible. The people that put work into that, kudos. But it was not indexed, and we've had the highest rate of inflation, more or less in a generation, especially around construction. So we desperately need that, or we're going to have pretty serious implications. So to me, we're at a branch. We can go, we're very good, but we can be that world-class system, kind of to where Katie just explained, where we could really be that thing that fully connects Northern Virginia and the region together, or we can go backwards. I, for one, think it's pretty obvious we should go forward, not backwards, but that will be the decision ahead of us, and again, I remain confident that that will get taken care of.
Pierre, you're unique here because you're funding transit and also providing transit. So how has Arlington succeeded in the past year, and what challenges do you see going forward?
So first, I want to give a big shout out to several individuals. First, our county board members. They have been super supportive of transit and art over many, many years. So those who laid the groundwork as well as those who are current. So big thank you there. Big thank you to our county manager's office as well as to our Department of Environmental Services. A big, big shout out to the Arlington Transit team. I don't know if you all in the room know how much work goes into everyday operations from Art, Star, our capital projects. They are super dedicated and do an amazing job. And also a big shout out to our riders. Our riders, when we have great days, we hear about it sometimes. When we have bad days, we definitely hear about it. But we appreciate all the feedback that we do receive because that goes to helping us be better. First, by any chance between Art, Metrobus, Metro Rail, Metro Access, and VRE here in Arlington, can anyone in the audience guess how many trips were taken in FY25? Just shout it out if you know. 2.5 million? No, that's super low. Anyone else? 10 million? We're getting a little closer. I'll just throw it out there. Over 52 million. Remember, we are a community of only 240,000 people. So you could think about over 52 million. That's just counting VRE, counting Art, Metrobus, Metro Rail, as well as Metro Access. It doesn't factor in OmniRide. It doesn't factor in Dash, Fairfax Connector, Loudon Transit, that all have service here in the county. So the numbers are probably way higher than 52 million, but just think about that, let that sink in. I want to just quickly talk about some of our overall accomplishments over the last year. We did open up a new operations and maintenance facility in Green Valley. That has been a tremendous success in terms of getting our buses out on the road and also improved our reliability and on-time performance. We saw a 3% uptick from the last fiscal year to fiscal year 25, and we also seen that continue to uptick as part of FY26. Another big accomplishment, our ridership continues to grow. So if you look at our curve, traditionally, before the pandemic, we had these two, peak, morning peak, afternoon peak. Now you're seeing more of a hill. So you're seeing, your morning peak, but you're also seeing a sustained ridership throughout the day. You're also seeing sustained ridership throughout the evening, especially and on weekends as well. So we are continuing to see that overall growth, and we are pushing to ensure that it continues. Our goal is to hit over 3 million riders, either this fiscal year or just after this fiscal year. But overall, so service-wise, we are focusing on our customers and ensuring that our customers are being heard. Just want to talk about two of our other capital projects, our Crystal City East Entrance project that's continuing to go well. We're still on schedule, so fingers crossed that we can hit that deadline, as well as our East Falls Church bus bay expansion project. We kicked that off this year, and we had some rough starts, but we are finally back on schedule, so that's a great thing. Now, I just want to quickly talk about some of our challenges. Now, Randy, you talked about funding. That's a major, major, major thing that we all are dealing with. However, one of the big things that we are dealing with directly at ART is modernizing our ITS backend and front-end infrastructure. It is a major, major challenge in terms of understanding that there is a lot that happens. If you're on the bus, there's bus computers, there's onboard computers. We have computers and other software in our house, and all those things have to work together. So we're in the major renovation project right now of making sure that we modernizing that technology piece so that our customers can understand and get better information from us in terms of and having improved reliability. So all those things are going to continue to happen. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are working our darnest to make sure that does happen. And we do have end goals when this is going to be complete. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
All right. So, Mark Sheffield, first of all, thank you for jumping in at the last minute. It's been a big year for VRE. There's a lot ahead. The Long Bridge project, obviously. Tell us, about your success this year and your challenges next year.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of VRE staff here. I also see some members of the operations board, including our chair. So I would just thank you very much to all of you for being here. I think our challenges are well known, so I'm going to put a pin in that and come back to it. Operationally, for the first time in 10 years, earlier this month, we launched a new train on the Manassas line. We've even been calling it the Kate train occasionally, because we had a hole in the schedule. We had a lot of our riders telling us, hey, you need a train here, you need a train here. We were able to do that. It's already been very successful, so we're very happy about that. As many of you know, we also have a new midday storage yard in Alexandria that we're standing up. We already have one train living there during the day, and as you may know, we have milestones. We have an agreement with Amtrak that over the next couple of years we have to get all of our trains out of where we store them north of Union Station. So beginning in mid-January, we're going to be storing even more trains there during the midday. It's just the beginning step of a much larger process that really is going to change VRE. That's on the operations. On capital delivery. When I joined VRE 8 years ago now, we did a lot of planning, we did a lot of engineering, but we didn't do a lot of actual capital delivery. And in the past couple of years, that has completely turned around. We've delivered our new Lou facility down in Spotsylvania, totally redid the Fredericksburg station, totally rebuilt the Quantico station, and just very recently delivered a new parking garage and pedestrian bridge out at Manassas Park. And if you haven't had a chance to go out there and look at that project, it is part of an absolute transformation of that whole downtown, which we're just very happy to be a part of. We just had our groundbreaking for the Alexandria Station and King and Commonwealth Bridges project. That's going to be a huge project, only about a half a mile away from my house even, so I'm very jazzed about that. And then, of course, there's all of our coordination that we're doing with VPRA, the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, as a part of TRV, really changing that entire corridor from the Long Bridge down to Franconia. It's going to be challenging. I'm sure we're going to run into difficulties, but when it's done, it's going to be so exciting in terms of what VRE and Amtrak and everything on the East Coast is just going to totally change. As far as our challenges, Randy and Pierre already talked about the money. We've been very, very happy to be part of the SJ28 and the DMVMoves processes over the last year. We're excited to see how things go in Richmond in the coming year. All of that, of course, stems from ridership for VRE. Being a commuter rail operator in the Washington region, there aren't many transit agencies that got hit worse by the pandemic than we did. And so we saw improvement. This year has been kind of a whipsaw. We had the RTO mandates, and our ridership almost doubled, almost overnight. Then we've had the shutdown, drop back down. That ends, back up. And now we're going to be having, some work windows to help for, that VPRA needs to do their Long Bridge project. We're trying to gauge what the impact on the ridership will be there. But all of this, and I think we'll probably talk about it a little bit in the next question, all of this is part of VRE and our board and the commissions and all the electeds, as even Dave mentioned, coming to the realization that VRE can no longer be just a commuter railroad that does peak hour, peak direction travel. We have to become a regional railroad. We have to provide trains on the weekends in the off-peak in the reverse direction. And everyone in the region has been incredibly supportive of VRE. It's not a quick process, but everyone has been behind us as we've been trying to make that change, and it's been very good. So, thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So, Bob Schneider of OmniRide. OmniRide has seen huge ridership growth in this past year. So, tell us, how that's gone, how you got there, and what challenges you face maintaining that going forward. Yeah, no, you got to turn your mic on.
So there we go. All right. So we were fortunate that we recovered quicker than most of our regional peers in that we were a lot more flexible. During the pandemic, we watched what the ridership patterns were. We figured out which trips people were glomming onto, so we were able to really bolster services. But during the pandemic, we also expanded our footprint down into the Spotsylvania area with the FredEx extension. With all the opening of I-66 toll lanes happened in the middle of a pandemic. By the way, we did a groundbreaking right before a pandemic. It was great for a new facility. There's irony in there. But it was only 2 weeks to flatten the curve, so it worked out fine. What was really interesting is because we had that recovery, what we didn't have, and we'll talk about it, is the funding, because the irony is we're mainly funded by motor fuels tax. So every person that rode with us actually reduced the amount of funding we got. So that was one of our big challenges, but in spite of all of that, we had amazing success, and definitely the return to work helped. We had about a 30% ridership increase because we were already in great shape. What has been so critical with that is fare recovery. Between fare recovery and the programs that we operate on commuter choice, DRPT outside the Beltway, we're the most efficient transit system in the region because less than 50% of our operating funds comes from taxes. The vast majority actually comes from user fees on the toll lanes combined with the fares. And what's great about that is as we collect those fares, it helps the state grant last longer. It helps the commuter choice grant last longer. So it's a really complex program, but it does amazing work. And because of that, we've been able to add trips because we had standing room only coming out of the Pentagon. So we had people, it was a wonderful problem to have, but we had customers complaining that the bus was too full because Mark was now sitting next to me when I was used to having an empty seat. Like, those are the growing problems we do love to have. But it's a massive return on investment for the state. But let's talk also about our local services. Our local services have been booming. One of the advantages that we've been able to really enjoy is that with that increase in ridership, we've been able to take that revenue and stabilize our budget a little bit. We still, have the challenge of the motor fuels tax, but we're able to take a little bit of that money and reinvest it in our local services. Some of our routes don't see a bus for 2 hours in the middle of the day. We're going to fix that. They don't have a trip that comes through for 90 minutes. We're going to fix that. And those are small potholes on a big road, but they make a huge difference for our passengers. You're talking about lifeline services in some cases, but that's healthcare, that's jobs. And as we talk about transit funding, that's one of the taxes that actually makes it more affordable to live. It's this irony that we can actually have a user fee that generates and lowers your cost of getting things done. Other granular things that we could talk about is we have our pass program. So to have an unlimited ride pass program for commuters is fantastic. It takes the ease away and it encourages ridership. You don't have to slug at the end of the month because transit isn't coming out of your pocket anymore. That's been great. But for us, the most exciting thing we've done recently is the transit app. Lots of people use the transit app, but we've added the Transit Royale. The Transit Royale is really granular features inside of it. You can do crowdsource information, but you can also tell us whether the air conditioner, or this morning, the heater works. You can tell us whether the driver was friendly. Was the bus stop dirty? Was the shelter dirty? So we can get those things taken care of. But it gives us real-time information from our passengers. We don't have to wait till the end of the month. We don't have to wait for a customer complaint. We can be more aggressive with those kinds of things. And that's where the most important thing to mention is our staff. Every time a bus turns left and a bus turns right, our staff has done the math. They've been granular looking at the ridership data, adjusting the flexibility, and tinkering the service. So as customers came back, we were able to make adjustments and be very, very creative. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that all of the things that we've done from a year ago, our board has been the ones who said, go do it, be creative, be thoughtful, do outreach to our customers, be engaged with the community. And those are all the things that we've done that has helped support the OmniRide mission. It's not just about I-66. It's not just about I-95. Our service runs from Front Royal to DC. Our service runs from below Fredericksburg to DC. But we run a lot of service in Prince William and especially Manassas and Manassas Park. So having those different communities, those different political bodies, and getting them all to come together at a commission level and lean into solutions is what makes it wonderful to work up here. You don't have to fight. You don't have to fight the cause. Everyone agrees that we're needed.
Thank you. So, you've all alluded to this a bit already, but next we're going to talk about what Mark called the whiplash of this year, that there's RTO, there's rebounding ridership, but then there's the longest government shutdown in history. There's also federal workforce cuts and economic headwinds generally because of that. So, how have you dealt with, and how do you see yourself dealing with going forward, those economic headwinds? Randy?
Yeah, so listen, that's always, there's headwinds. There was headwinds when I was 5 years old, and there's going to be headwinds when I'm 85 years old. So they are what they are. And our job is to not worry about, like, yeah, I care about this morning's rush hour, but that shouldn't be my focus, and it shouldn't be our larger focus, right? We're concentrating on what's a rush hour and weekends going to look like in 2035 and on, right? So separating micro and macro, I think, is really important from a policy versus reactive world that we are in today. We are one of the richest, most diverse, fantastic places to live on planet Earth. And yes, there's some headwinds, but this place is amazing to live. That's why when I had the opportunity to come back here, I was like, yeah, of course I want to go back and live in the DC area. It's awesome, right? We can afford to do what we're actually talking about doing. Quite frankly, we can't afford not to do what we're talking about, right? So at Metro, we say it clear: where Metro goes, the community grows. And Katie gave all those stats, right? So no Metro, our economic future is very dramatically different, right? Affordability is a huge problem that we have in our region because so many people do want to live here, right? That's a good thing. People want to live here because it's awesome to live here. Now we got to figure out how to make it easier for people to live here. And so the way to do that is have transportation work really well, transit, and have a lot of housing and mixed development near transit. And so I see people like my board member, Walter Alcorn. I saw Chairman McKay just walk in. We just did an event out at West Falls the other day. That's going to transform that whole area. It's like going to be the size of Mosaic right next to a great metro station with a bunch of local bus service. That's what we're doing. We've done 3 real estate events at Metro in the last 3 weeks. One in Grosvenor, not Grosvenor, by the way, Grosvenor. Took me like a year to practice that. New Carrollton and West Falls. We have another one coming up at Capitol Heights next month. We've done events all over the place. We got a really cool project we want to get going at Braddock, Huntington, that we're working with Delegate Sickles on and some others. So, like, at the end of the day, these are great investments for our future. And I just encourage us all to, like, get off Twitter. There's realities of headwinds, but then there's this stuff we can't control. And if we stay united and focused as a region, we can create our own destiny. And I think there's a ton of people working really hard at that. So yeah, like during the federal government shutdown, federal government shutdowns are horrible. And that's not a partisan issue. We should be embarrassed as a society that we even have a federal government shutdown, right? Like, I grew up in Canada. There's no such thing as a federal government shutdown. And we're going to have another one probably coming up. It's just a horrible way to run the largest institution on planet Earth. So that's not partisan. That's just, I think, normal. We should all find that, like, not normal behavior. With that said, we lost like $5 million of revenue during that. I'm not getting that revenue back. So somehow I got to go figure out how to balance $5 million in savings to do that. And that's what we're going to be focused on doing. But, even during the shutdown, we didn't see that big of a decrease. And that just shows you how much ridership is growing in Metro all day service, during the day, late at night, weekends. We continue to grow at all periods. Today's super cold, but we're probably going to move better part of 1 million people today, right? Think of what that actually does in our economy and quality of life. So that's where I'm focused. I know all the people that were I look at Clark and the work that we were talking about doing with DMVMoves and others. It's what's the next game? What the game after that? Not exactly, this morning. And I think that's where we just got to keep staying focused and we are in control of our own destiny. And there's just some amazing leaders in this region that we should try to figure out ways to support. They're doing the right thing.
I can't believe the most popular transit executive on Twitter is telling people to get off the app.
Definitely stay off Twitter.
Pierre, what about you? How have Arlington and Transit and Arlington as a county government dealt with the whipsaw, roller coaster this year?
I think overall, like Randy mentioned, there's going to be ebbs and flows. Transit has been around since the 1800s. There's been constant pendulum swings this way, that way. There's been differences in things that happen politically. There's been economic challenges. One thing that has happened is that transit has been resilient. I think our biggest thing for art, we have to continue to do what we do best, control what's in our own wheelhouse, because we can't control what happens outside of us. So one of the things that, looking at ridership is if you factor in to make transit as simple as possible. We're out here competing as an industry with, people who want to drive, that's great. If you want to walk, that's great. If you want to take the bike, but we need to make sure that our product that we put out on the street is the best product that we can. So we can't just be good, we have to be exceptional. So focusing on the customer, focusing on their experience is really key, because once you get that customer at least to try transit, that can go a long way to have them continue to use transit no matter what happens. And with the government shutdown, we saw just a small increase. We actually saw increased ridership where we have all-day service. On our commuter routes, we did see some drops, but overall, our ridership was sustained across the board. So like I mentioned, we need just to focus on, we're focusing on our customers, but we also focus on making transit as simple as possible and also improving just general reliability. When you know that that bus is going to be there every 10 minutes or every 5 minutes, that may give you some ideas that maybe I should consider taking art. So, we can only control what's in our own wheelhouse, and we can only do what we do best and try to improve on that and make sure that we have funding to help sustain that and help funding to help have people make choices to utilize our service.
Mark, you already talked about this a little, but want to go a little more in depth on?
Sure. I think Randy is right that we need to sort of ignore the near-term churn and really look at the long term. And when I look back at the long-term plan that VRE had adopted 10 years ago, in a totally different kind of environment, we didn't have any way to add capacity except to make our existing trains longer. We were still totally looking at the peak hour, peak direction commute market. We had some sort of blue sky discussions about Long Bridge and about all these other things, but it was really it wasn't real. And now you come to this year, and we just adopted our new long-range plan. And between the pandemic, which I think, we had very good data looking at our customers, and there was like every year a little bit of increase in remote work. Like every year a little bit of, maybe 0.1 days less working in the office. And then the pandemic moved all of that ahead by 10 or 15 years, right? That was one thing. And then at the same time, we had the Commonwealth coming in and committing to TRV, committing to Long Bridge. And so between those two things, it's like a completely different world for VRE. Now our new long range plan, it speaks entirely to us now becoming that regional railroad, offering weekends, offering off-peak, offering reverse direction. I wish we could do it today. We can't. We really don't have the capacity to do it until Long Bridge is in place. But trying to keep that long-term vision of what we know the region needs us to be, and not getting caught up in the short term, I think is what we've really been trying to do.
All right, Bob.
Since I moved into the industry in summer of 2000, I've experienced 9/11. Hurricane Katrina, and what that did with fuel prices. We enjoyed the Great Recession, which was not short. And then we had a pandemic. So we're kind of used to headwinds as what we do. It's kind of part of our DNA as transit professionals, and we'll never get away from that. One of the important things that we do as professional and technical staff is paying attention to what are the trends that are occurring and how could we future-proof ourselves. Things like we went through the government shutdown back in, I guess it was 2018, just like Randy described, we took a major hit in our fares. Well, now that we have the monthly pass and we've been pushing people over, when those monthly passes renewed, we still collected all that revenue. And that was really important because we still had 70% of the workforce still went to work every day on our express routes, plus all of the local routes. If we had lost that revenue, we would have been in the hole that Randy's described. Yes, we'll lose a little bit, but nowhere near as much as we did back in 2018-19. So those are examples of where those are headwinds, but we've had to future-proof ourselves against issues like that. And that's why, and as we talked about SJ 28 right now, getting stability for the region is the most important thing, and I think we're there. I think it's one of the things that's different. If we asked that question 2 years ago, I think our answer is very different, but all that we've been able to achieve in the last 2 years, and it's not because of return to work. We were already doing the things pre-return to work, but the RTO order at least changed and filled up those handful of empty seats we had on certain trips. We still had standing room only out of the Pentagon during the government shutdown. So despite all of that, we still had people standing on their way home to get down I-95, and you really can't change that. What is really distinct is that because we tinker, because we pay attention, we can be flexible, and we can watch patterns and changes. We're able to be a little more nimble when you're a bus-only service, but we have to pay attention to what's going on in Front Royal. We have to pay attention to what's going on in Warrenton. We're paying attention to land use programs and development in Culpeper, if you can believe it, because that's the next area. They're approving 1,200 housing units right outside of our service area, but we don't have the revenue to provide it. Guess where they're all going to need? A lot of express service, a lot of local service. So those are headwinds that aren't even here yet that we're paying attention to now so that we're prepared in a year, year and a half when those houses start coming out of the ground.
Okay, so, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we're a little behind schedule, and I think that leads in well to maybe, if you can, just in a minute, if you get the sustainable funding that you're looking for, what could we see from your transit system, starting with you, Randy, that's most exciting?
Yeah, so very quickly, we're going to become an even better system. We're going to have much higher reliability. We're going to have more bus service, have the ability to do a lot more bus service, ability to do it all for less cost. That's the whole game. If we modernize our system and be like the rest of the ones in Europe and Asia that you'll see, we can finally manage long-term cost predictability, and it could be sustainable, and we can provide much better service. So we need more bus service in this region. Today, let's say in our busy bus days, we move 420,000, 425. I want us to move 500,000 on bus. That's what we should be aiming for, right? On our rail system, we want to be able to get higher frequencies. Like take the Silver Line's a good example. We just talked through all the Tyson stuff. We need more high-capacity transit in Northern Virginia. There's no question long-term we need that. And the question is, how's Metro going to work on that? I see Monica here earlier. We got to work with Monica on our BRT plan and how all that comes together. There's huge opportunities here. Connect to VRE, these multi-stations. We need things like joint passes and ticketing. There's so much that we can do. We don't use our rivers for transportation yet. We should be thinking that way. I mean, there's so much we can do, but the funding is going to secure the future and allow us to then really drive to this world-class system we want. So I'm very, very optimistic it's going to get done.
What about you, Pierre, in Arlington? What could you do with more funding?
Randy just said everything I was going to say, so
Let's get it done.
let's get it done. That's exactly.
All
So
right.
improved service for art, looking at reliability, and also we have a transit strategic plan that we adopted just a few years ago. So there are many elements of that we can push forward. I talked earlier about our ITS modernization. That will go a long way to having that level of reliability for our system as well as for our customers. But yeah, any additional funding at this point, it does allow all of us to open our doors to do a whole lot more. So you said it all, Randy. So I was going to say a lot of the same things you said.
Mark, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just add, in addition to all the different new service that we want to add, I really want to jump on what Randy said about joint passes. We VRE need to integrate better into the region as far as how customers pay for us. And I also want us all I want to be thinking about, VRE has issues with first and last mile. Like almost all of our customers drive to get to our train stations. We need to work with the other agencies to have other ways for people to get to the trains in the morning. And then we're sort of locked in onto the east side of downtown just because of where the railroad tracks go. Sort of last mile there, new ways to get people off of our trains and that last mile to the office. So we want to work with all the partners on things like that as well.
Great. And Bob, what about you?
Primarily service area expansion. Frequency, of course, is all described here, but new revenue streams would allow us to provide funding for. We're sitting inside George Mason, but they have a George Mason SciTech campus in western Prince William County that does not have access to regular transit, even though it just sits a short distance from Manassas Park, and the VRE station. So the ability to develop some kind of services where a SciTech campus or industrial development can recruit workforce out of the Shenandoah Valley, ride existing services to the Gainesville Haymarket area, and then have local services to get the jobs. Now you're talking local economic development. Again, we've talked a lot about commuting, but sometimes it's commuting to get to something like a Tyson's Corner or getting to a university corridor where the jobs are just different than what they might be in the downtown core.
Okay, now we have about 10 minutes for questions from the audience. If you want to ask one, please come up to this microphone here. Well, I can ask something else if no one else has questions, but here, let's start with Jason.
Thank you, Rachel. Jason Sanford with the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. Sorry, I can't tell if it's on. But I guess one of my questions would just be to Randy, just about Metro. I know last week you guys announced some of the business case for the automation plan, and a big part of the funding request is state of good repair, but also automation on the system, being able to expand capacity, moving more people. And one of the big issues for Northern Virginia has long been the Blue, Orange, and Silver Line corridor, and how do we get the expanded capacity there? I was just curious because within that plan, it seems like I know the first line that you guys are looking at automating is the red line. I was wondering if you were interested or if you've given any consideration to expanding automation in one of the Metro Rail lines that also goes into Virginia as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. So I'll do the latter first. So we generally do everything on the red line because there's no what we call interlining, so it's one line. So that's a major factor. This is incredibly complex software and engineering to get done. So a couple agencies of the world have done interlining. Very little have done a three-line interlining through a tunnel. So one, we got to build the capacity here, and we need to build it in-house because this is like a 20-year modernization of the Metro Rail system. Also, the red line's our oldest, and it carries like tomorrow, we'll probably carry 215,000 people. So the red line tomorrow will move more people than the 3 regional airports combined tomorrow. We forget about that. That's the kind of workhorse. And the silver line can have a future that's like that. And I really actually believe that. The red line's our oldest, and we desperately need, and I think some people in this room had the opportunity to go into an old signal room that we brought to people at Farragut North. It is ATRAX. And it doesn't mean it's not safe, because it fails safe. It means it's slowly becoming less reliable. And the cost to maintain the old stuff will outstrip the cost of modernizing. And so part of this modernization plan is to not just upgrade our signaling. So a good example, multiple signal failures today. Like bad weather, it gets a little bit more. The way Blue, Orange, Silver works, if there is any failure in the system on Blue, Orange, and Silver, specifically between Roslyn and Stadium Armory, all 3 lines. So if you're in Ashburn and there is a bad issue, a signal failure that happens at Farragut West, you're getting impacted just like you are at New Carrollton, just like you are at Franconia Springfield. So if you live in Loudoun County, you want the core of the system to work at 100% because it impacts you. Because it's not a geographic, it's a systems issue. So we desperately need to replace our signaling. We believe by working with the federal government in the core capacity program, we can actually fully modernize the system for probably less local money total than if we just did the signaling alone. And it provides hundreds of millions and ultimately billions of ROI because of the entire change that we go through the system. So one, long-term labor costs will be clearly different, but also our capital costs will be different. We will need less rail cars and less rail spaces in our yards and facilities to run more service because of the level of automation. And so right now, the only fully automated rail system in our region is at Dulles Airport. And I just told you how many people we move just on the red line. So it's pretty obvious where we need to go if we want to be at that world level. And that was the business case we laid out. And we presented to the board last week our proposed budget. And then obviously that's for the board's consideration between now and probably get approved around the April timeframe. Yep.
All right, thank you. Stuart.
Thank Thank you. Stuart Schwartz, Coalition for Smarter Growth. First of all, Bill Pugh and I are here and just thrilled to hear how much talk today and commitment there is to a transit-oriented development future for the region. That's come a long way since I started in 1997. Second, I hope everyone will join us in Richmond, Annapolis, and D.C. to support the funding, because you all have made the great case for that. I have a question for Randy, I guess primarily in terms of, and then one very quickly for Dallas as well. For Randy, what else can we do, what can local governments do to accelerate transit-oriented development at the stations so we can get that build out faster? And for Dallas, what can we do to accelerate the current 5-year time frame for the Long Bridge and associated construction, in part by talking to DC about the noise limits?
Quickly, you got someone in the front row here who championed missing middle in Arlington and probably decided that was why she wanted out of politics after that happened. The third rail of, and as someone that was on a planning board for like 6 years, yeah. But like you have leaders that are walking the walk. Actually, last time I saw Katie, we were on the train together. But Chair McKay said this, I think, sitting here last year, if I recall, and I know he said it other places, which is the local jurisdictions have to figure out what the appropriate parking policy and to incentivize the right type of development, right? Go Montgomery County. Montgomery County did one of the best tax structures to encourage development around transit stations. And without that, there'd be none of that development happening in North Bethesda and Grosvenor and things like that. The one that we celebrated at Grosvenor the other day was 200 senior living units that would never have happened without what Montgomery County did. So I think you got the tools. It's just about how assertive and aggressive to do that. And as the market conditions keep getting better with financing, Metro needs to also be ready to lean in and help make that happen. And whether that's, we got one at Braddock, we got one at Huntington, we need to do everything we can to help our partners to create that development.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, the work windows, that VPRA has been working on with us, with Amtrak, with CSX, it is a challenge. We and VPRA, we all want to deliver the Long Bridge project as quickly as we can. If there are going to be impacts to service, we want to minimize the impacts on our riders as much as possible. I think we will all be watching as the work windows get implemented in January, watching very closely, coordinating constantly, and if there are changes that need to be made, all of us collectively will make them. Stuart, if you have a special connection to the district that you can help us with on that, though, we'll be happy to take it.
All right. If there's no one else, we have a few more minutes. Actually, Pierre, I'm curious what you would say about, since you're in Arlington, where some of that missing middle debate was very heated.
No comment about the missing middle. So no comment about the missing middle. Overall, it's not a joke. Yeah.
Fair enough. So we have one more question since we have a little time. You all kind of approach this in various ways, but what do you think are the best opportunities for better coordination? And you can all jump in on this. I mean, I see one, Pierre, you mentioned the East Falls Church bus bay. I know parking at East Falls Church, I think, is oversubscribed. So yeah, talk about how you guys can coordinate better. Anyone?
I can start. Yeah, I think, if there are opportunities to coordinate, one of the things is for this region, we have many different providers of transit. In many cases, we do issue our own procurements. So opportunities for joint procurement is something that we can all leverage. Looking at from our buses to our technology, that's something, I know with DMVMoves, there was a focus on that. And also just looking at how, overall we've done, over the years, a great job of just working together as a larger team here in the DMV. But looking at our buses, how can we bring the costs down there? How can we bring the costs of, bus stop signage? How can we look at, working together to look at some standards for bus stops in general? So I think there's a lot of things that we could do as part of the DMVMoves. So I think, with that moving forward, we're looking forward to working with all of you all up here, as well as all of our other regional partners to getting a lot of this stuff done.
Mark, yeah, what about you? VRE, I know, has ambitions with Mark to better serve the region.
No? Yes, thank you. I was actually going to try to tie a couple of these things together. With the work windows, we at VRE are really hoping that our riders will either be able to move to an earlier train or they'll get off at Alexandria and be able to transfer over to the yellow and blue to get to wherever they need to go. Doing that integration with Metro better to make that a seamless transfer. If this were just only going to be for a month or a quarter, maybe we wouldn't worry about it that month. But the windows are going to be in place for years, and so this is the kind of thing that we need to be working on.
Yeah, Rachel, my only comment would be there's lots of models out there, and I've opined a little bit before, but I would say this way. The region already pays for Metro, and the region should try to get every ounce of benefit out of what they already pay for. And so the region pays a lot for a lot of expertise, to buy a lot of stuff, to do a lot of stuff, and I wouldn't necessarily replicate stuff that you're already paying for in many ways. So Metro needs to be open to help its partners, especially when it's a lot bigger and has a lot of expertise. And I think over time, kind of like Mark's Liz example, like say King Street, there are numerous opportunities for our region to probably manage costs and actually create better incentive and less friction to get more people on transit.
Say something to close us out in the last
Yes.
minute.
The one thing I really want to mention, and I have to shout out to the MetroCog staff and the DRPT staff, you already do joint procurements for us. Thank you. We're doing fuel through COG. We're doing ad buys through NVTC. We're buying buses off DRPT, engineering services off DRPT. By the way, we're already part of procurements with our good friends at Dash for camera systems. So they went out and looked at camera systems, or we've bought off the GSA contract. By us knowing what the heck is going on, and it's not us, like we see each other at meetings and we just basically say, no comment, right? Stuff like that. But our technical staff are meeting constantly to talk about what's changing, what CAD AVL packages are you looking at. So right now, Dash is looking at a new CAD AVL package. We're part of the procurement process in that, and we're an add-on. We do things like Vanpool Alliance. We're doing TDM programs to just go into nooks and crannies. We're doing the partnerships. And it was really interesting to watch as DMVMoves unfolded, how much of a growth and learning it was for some of our elected officials to realize just how much of that stuff we're already doing. So I want to personally thank the DRPT staff, the COG staff, et cetera, who have allowed that to happen naturally over the past 5 years.
All right. Well, I think that covers it. Thank you all for joining today for a good conversation. And I will hand it back to Kate.
Yeah, I think you're going to, if you guys want to hold out for a second, we're going to do a group photo. So go ahead and feel free to take your name tags off if you like. Thank you so much. I get the benefit of actually moving over to the moderator seat. And I want to apologize. I am not Nick Donahue. So I have the honor of trying to pinch hit for our new nominee for Secretary of Transportation. Not a big surprise that he was not able to join us, but he did send his regrets. So I'm going to do my best. But anyway, just to do a little bit as our folks come up on the stage, and I need to put my hands down so I can see exactly what I was going to say. So obviously we've had the opportunity to hear from some of our key regional transit leaders and learn a bit more about successes and challenges they have ahead. And now this is really an opportunity to hear from our regional leaders, our elected leaders, who have been instrumental in two major initiatives that have been occurring over a lot of meetings. And I want to thank all of them for their incredible dedication to, which is both the DMVMoves and the SJ28 Joint Subcommittee. The two committees spent nearly 2 years studying ways to establish long-term sustainable funding for public transit in the Commonwealth of Virginia, as well as in the greater Washington, D.C. region. Both came up with fiscally responsible ways to maintain our current transit network and laid out a framework for improving our bus and train services. So again, I know you're all looking forward to this being moderated by Nick Donahue. We all, of course, wish him very much success in his confirmation process and working with him in the next administration. So I'm happy to invite our next panel to the stage. First of all, honored this morning to be joined by Virginia State Senator and Chair of the SJ28 Joint Subcommittee, Senator Adam Eben. Come on up. There's a sticker right at your seat, okay? Metro Board Vice Chair and DMVMoves Chair, Paul Smedberg. Virginia Delegate and member of the SJ28 Joint Subcommittee Delegate, hang on a sec, Miss McClure. I threw you off there, didn't I? We're gonna save the best for last, it's all good. You'll find your seat. Fantastic. Chair of the Fairfax County Board, and on the DMVMoves Task Force, Mr. Jeff McKay, coming from the back. And again, last but not least, a DMVMoves Task Force and Vice Chair of the SJ28 Subcommittee, Virginia, Delegate Mark Sickles. Guess I should have prepped you. Go ahead. Please feel free to grab some water. All right, so does everybody have microphones? All right. Fantastic. All right. So as we started off this event and have heard throughout our morning, long-term sustainable funding for public transit network is a key element that is necessary for our region to thrive. And so, I've had the opportunity over my career to really dive in and understand what it means to have strong public transit. And the challenge is, whether I'm in my space at the federal government or here focused on regionally, lack of funding stability, predictability, and truly the challenges of encumbering our ability as an industry to do the bold things, to do the necessary things to effectively grow our service for our communities. So over the last 18 months, our region, led by all of these incredible folks sitting next to me, really dove in, spent a lot of their time with the support of a whole range of stakeholders to really put some big thoughts into this. And we're talking about things that could be game changers for Metro, for VRE, for every single one of our local transit systems. And so collectively, these efforts, they led to recommendations. And I know you've heard about this. NVTC has endorsed both of these recommendations, and they really are talking about identifying state and local funding that can make the difference for our local systems. In SJ28, I know we're going to hear a little bit more about this, they identified a collective $400 million necessary in new revenue to maintain, modernize, and ensure that Metro, VRE, OmniRide, and yes, ART, Loudoun County Transit, Dash Q, and Fairfax Connector have a supporting, moving, sustainable, and growing future. So I'm excited to dive into the discussion, and I wanted to start with two leaders who were instrumental in setting up and truly facilitating these conversations. I've got Paul Smedberg, the co-chair of DMVMoves, who was also on the SJ28, as well as Senator Eben, who is the chair of the SJ28 Joint Subcommittee. I'm going to start with Paul, with you first, if that works, and then go head over to Senator Eben. And I do want to say, just like we did on the last panel, we will have an opportunity to have some questions at the end. So start thinking of those things now. So Paul, tell us a little bit more about DMVMoves and sort of, what did you learn? What did you find out?
Well, we learned a lot. So DMVMoves was an effort between Metro and the Council of Governments, COG board, and the leadership there to come together to come up with a long-term sustainable funding and coordination plan for transit in this region, understanding that there were real opportunities to make significant advances. Second, it was also the realization that Metro was going to be facing another funding cliff, capital funding cliff in fiscal year 29-30. Despite all the wonderful efforts that the region did come together in 2018 to address some of those issues, and that was really, really helpful. Just as an example, the cliff, if it happens, we'd go from approximately $2.2 billion a year in capital funding down to about 1.4. So that would really put at risk all the advances that we made in terms of reliability and safety advances, moving forward. It's obvious to all of us if there's one thing that does bring this entire region together, and that does include suburban Maryland and DC, it is Metro. So people truly understand the importance of it, bringing the group together. Want to applaud Clark Mercer and his team with COG. I think Clark was here at one point for helping us coordinate on that effort. And we made some real, big advances. Everyone agrees. Also, too, the one thing the Metro Board hears, and I certainly heard when I was chair, well, if we commit to giving Metro more money, what is it exactly that we're going to get in return? What is it we're buying? What is it we're going to get for our dollars? How do we make this case to our constituents? We learned a lot during COVID, how many people are transit dependent and how important transit is to so many people in this community, whether it be for just daily getting around, education efforts, and a lot of people are transit dependent in this region. So it's vital that we address this issue. We had several meetings. I see at the Board of Trade, Jack McDougall's here. He and Brian Hill from Fairfax County led the working groups, which were really the workhorses here of this effort. They brought the administrative and appointed heads to the table and the elected leaders. I was extremely encouraged by the fact that people committed to these meetings. They attended, they participated, they didn't send surrogates, they themselves were there. We had the elected leaders like Senator Eben and Delegate Sickles, the equivalents in Maryland and the district. So I was really encouraged by it, and I think we really did end up in a great place with the resolution, which was, very detailed. It was the first step. Now the real work begins, and that's where Senator Evans and Delegate Sickles take over.
Thank you so much, Paul. And Senator Eben, SJ 28, that was the Virginia deep dive. And as you know, went beyond Metro and to include VRE, local buses, et cetera. So what did you learn from that process? Sort of what can we take from that?
I was amazed at the array of people involved in transit and their depth of knowledge. And I just want to start out first I want to thank Paul for his words and for his work with DMVMoves. Thank you, Paul. But I also want to thank the people who were involved in our technical advisory group. Andrew DeVetter, I believe, is in the room. If Andrew and all the people on the technical advisory could just raise their hands at least. I don't want to forget to acknowledge you. Because we had representatives of transit, of business, of localities, of VRE, of all the agencies at the table, giving us numbers that we could work around and strategies. Our task was pretty straightforward, which was to study long-term, sustainable, dedicated funding and cost containment strategies, not just for Metro, but also for VRE and all the public transit systems that serve NVTC and PRTC districts. And the working group helped us do our homework, and we knew that Virginia would need to, for what we knew Virginia would need to do in order to prepare for where we stand for today, just a month ahead of the legislative session in Richmond. We received reports throughout our existence from not just Paul, but from Nick Donahue and other key DMVMoves team members, and we're privileged to have two of those members on our task force. Our technical working group worked hand in hand with DMVMoves staff at both Metro and COG to make sure our two efforts were aligned from start to finish. So, separate from the DMVMoves effort, our Joint Subcommittee also identified that in Virginia we still need an operating funding solution for Metro. And the state and Northern Virginia localities put together a stopgap measure a few years ago to meet Virginia's operating subsidy. But the state money was from the general fund, and that's not really something that's going to be sustainable in Richmond for the long term. The other key difference between DMVMoves and SJ28 is that while DMVMoves conducted the analysis beyond transit needs for various agencies beyond Metro, We also focused on a funding plan for VRE and local bus operators. We came up with a $400 million need. Well, the $400 million need was identified by SJ28. Identified by SJ28 subcommittee tackles several needs, as I said. Metro's capital needs that were identified in DMVMoves, operating funding needs for Metro, and the needs of VRE, PRTC's OmniRide, and local bus systems in Northern Virginia. And just as a footnote, for OmniRide, this would be dedicated funding for OmniRide, which is needed. OmniRide has been funded successfully for years, courtesy of the localities, but we'd like to see that it's locked in. And the legislators on our joint subcommittee unanimously supported meeting those needs through identifying new revenues and cost containment measures, such as refining the 3% cap. We're now busy working on legislation that would see these concepts become reality. And I really appreciate the work that everyone put into it. And I did also just want to mention and thank the members of the SJ28 subcommittee. That includes our Vice Chair Mark Sickles, Supervisor Walter Alcorn, Senators Jennifer Boysko and Scott Scurville, Delegates Adele McClure and Carrie Delaney, and also Paul Smedberg and Kate yourself, and outgoing Virginia Transportation Secretary Shep Miller. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I mean, incredible work being done under these leaderships. And I'm really excited now to look to folks who have been deeply involved in both of these efforts. That would be Fairfax County Chair Jeff McKay and Delegate McClure, sort of speaking in many ways to your constituents here in your districts and in the county. So again, when we were talking a lot about Metro, and I really appreciate the Senator highlighting the other elements that were at play here, is recognizing that all of our localities, especially and particularly Arlington and Fairfax County, they actually touch on all three of these things, our local bus, our VRE, as well as on Metro. And so I'd love to hear, and perhaps I'll start with you, Delegate McClure, tell us a little bit about sort of what you see with what happened with SJ28 DMVMoves and sort of what this means for your constituents.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I was incredibly proud to serve on SJ 28, specifically because I represent the House District 2, the second House District in Arlington. And I actually have the most Metro stops of any House District in Virginia. So super proud to have served on that. We're also one of the most transit-dependent communities in Virginia. And as you know, these systems do not work in silos. They're all interconnected. And I had a chance to visit the communication center and see that myself just visually. And so, you know, what that means is that most of the residents in the area, especially those who are most vulnerable, who depend on these transit systems, who use this to get around, like our folks with seniors, folks with disabilities, folks who are in low-income households. Myself, when I grew up, I depended on all of the lines that actually come through my district: the silver, the orange, the yellow, the blue. And so this dedicated funding would mean improvements in reliability in service, and then also just making sure that we dedicate the resources that are necessary to support these systems. We are actively building housing around these transit systems, so we need to make sure that we are dedicating the resources necessary. And so what that means is that it would reduce congestion for Arlington residents. It also means that if these efforts succeed, that we will overall have better service, less congestion, cleaner air, and then also more time back in people's lives. So I'm very excited to be in the room with all of you. I see all of your faces. I've worked with so many of you. So you all overstand this issue in what I'm talking about. So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in terms of what this means for residents, not just in Arlington or Northern Virginia, but the rest of the Commonwealth. So I really appreciate, I'm speaking to the folks in this room, all of the work that you all do on a daily basis to even make the efforts that we're doing here possible. So thank you.
Thank you. And Chair McKay, just a little place called Fairfax County. What would you like to share with us this morning?
Well, I too want to thank everyone who's here. These are the transit heroes in the room, but we need a lot more of them. And so we really need to figure out how to tell this story, because as this heads to Richmond, it's not just the people in this room. It's a lot of other people that have to be convinced of the value of this. And so I will say a couple things. First, what was important on DMVMoves, and this is important for all of our constituents to understand, is this was a full-blown analysis that is doable. This is doable. Where we started and where we ended, if you think about this, I mean, the number that we needed has been reduced by 60%. Important because now it's a doable number. And a lot of that is because of efficiencies, other things that WMATA management and Randy and the WMATA board have done, but we needed to have a doable number. So that's really important. The second piece that's really important, and I'll put my local government hat on here for a moment, is local governments are ecosystems that are attached to Metro. And what I mean by that is we're running transit services that contribute to the success of Metro. Not everyone who gets on a Fairfax Connector or VRE train is heading to a Metro station to then get on Metro, but a lot of them are. And so if our bus systems in our jurisdictions are not helping grow ridership, we're losing an opportunity. So what's really important here is whatever solution we come up with in Richmond, we need to talk about it as a transit solution, not just a Metro solution. And for me, if we can get Fairfax Connector bus funded through some revenue stream that's outside of our general fund, we can get our VRE contributions paid for outside of a revenue stream that is not our general fund. Every dollar that we're able to do with that helps local governments in tremendous ways. One, we can invest in more services. Two, we can reduce the real estate tax burden on people that is choking affordable housing availability in Northern Virginia. And three, if nothing else, transit is not then a direct competitor with public safety, mental health, education, all the other things that local governments have to do to balance their budget. So we need to be talking about this as a long-term, reliable transit solution in Northern Virginia as opposed to just a Metro bill. And I think if we can talk about that ecosystem, it is helpful. And as the delegate mentioned, there are so many ways that this helps our region, from employment, obviously, economic development. If you look in Fairfax County, where is the most office growth happening right now? It's along our transit lines. Where is our office market struggling? In remote, suburban, not walkable, car-dependent type of office developments. And so this is an economic development moment that if, the Commonwealth of Virginia, of course, needs Northern Virginia's economy to grow, for Virginia's economy to grow, one way we know that happens here is if we invest in transit. Just look at where that economic development is happening. When housing affordability is a crisis, where can you make housing more affordable? You can do it around transit systems if for no other reason you're taking a lot of cost of car ownership and other things off the table for people to make the housing more affordable and to improve their lives. I told this story before, I'll say it really briefly. What really touched me was when I met a constituent in Tysons who told me this vision we had for Tysons that was focused on transit, focused on housing affordability, focused on walkability, changed her life because she was driving in from a suburban community far outside of the DMV area, what I consider to be far outside of the DMV area, not spending time with her kids at home, sitting in her car all day, burning fuel, burning money, couldn't afford to live in Tysons, there was no housing in Tysons, works at Dulles Airport. Now, she can ride transit to Dulles Airport, doesn't have a car, gets home to see her kids at night, helps them with homework, they're doing better in school, she has more money in her bank account. So when we were talking about Tysons, what she was talking about is you were talking about people like me. And if you do this stuff right, you can really improve the lives of a lot of people and improve our economy and our environment at the same time. And so we really need to be talking about this as a transit bill when we go to Richmond. And we really need to be talking about Metro for Northern Virginia is as important as just about any other utility you can think about. I mean, this is our farm subsidy for rural Virginia. I mean, this is so important to make sure it works here. This is not just a nice to have, it is a driver of our economy. And with DMVMoves, we have a once in a lifetime, for lifetime people in this room, opportunity to fix something that has plagued Metro for the longest time, for all of our lifetimes, which is no dedicated source of revenue that is predictable, allows the managers at Metro to long-term plan a system that is sustainable, that can be the system that we know it can be. It's great now. it can be so much better if we had that level of predictability and we all understood the importance of it.
Absolutely. And so we do have some legislative activities that need to occur. Delegate Sickles, I know you've been working on some things along with Senator Eben. Tell us a little bit about what things are looking like for the General Assembly.
Wow.
There you go.
Thank you. Well, I wish I knew the answer to that. I don't know. I can't really help you very much. Every year at this point, people try to sit around and go to lunch and figure out what we're going to do, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. I think you've heard a lot of excitement today, particularly from Randy Clark. I want to get a little Randy Clark enthusiasm in me, so I can spiel that out a little bit better. Maybe I don't think it's Canadian necessarily that gives you that thing. I heard this joke yesterday that. You probably saw this, that Trump really only wanted Alberta, not the rest of it, because they had the oil. But anyway, I was, it would have been great to have a 51st state, but I don't think that's going anywhere. So what do I think? I think this is something that needs to be done. I believe that our Northern Virginia delegation, which is expanded in definition from what I normally would think of Northern Virginia, needs to rally around these two proposals, one of these two proposals, and solve a big problem. I think we can do it. I think people are up to it. We've got to all talk to our fellow General Assembly members from around the state to, we're supporting your things. You need to support our things. This is the most important thing in Northern Virginia, our economy. Your money comes from here. All the arguments that everyone in this room knows, and also it's just a campaign. So we're going to start with figuring out. We're not going to introduce a bill. Actually, one of these bills or both these bills have been in drafting for weeks now, and they're so complicated. Believe it or not, with our waterfall approach to how we fund transportation in Virginia, they're so complicated. The staff is having a hard time putting pen to paper or getting it right. And okay, and the paying the Dominion bill here. I don't know. So soon, I hope soon, there will be a bill numbers that you can talk about, and you can talk to your General Assembly members about it. And in the bigger bill, we're going to have some money in there for interstates too. I-81 is $1 billion hole for us into the billions, really, into the future to fix the problems that are out there, the safety problems, and it's a major, obviously, commercial corridor through the state. So there's a little bit for everything. I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but we're taking this on by solving the operations and maintenance problem statewide and the capital improvements locally. So we will have dedicated funding, dedicated new taxes for PRTC jurisdictions and NVT jurisdictions that the rest of the state won't have. The bill also reduces the sales tax rate slightly so the rest of the state would have a 5% rather than a 5.3% sales tax. That's what it is across the state now. As most of you know in this room, Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia have a 6% rate that goes to transportation. The 1 cent goes to transportation, and that's been a lifesaver for our region for certain. So that's the big picture. And Jeff just already mentioned this, but our goal is to help reduce property taxes. In the past, in the General Assembly, we were afraid, and with good reason, that if we increase education spending, that small town and rural Virginia will just reduce their real estate property tax and use the new money from Richmond instead. That's a bad thing in that context. In this context, it will be a good thing to help local government reduce the pressure on property taxes. So that is a major goal of the bigger bill. I want to thank Delegate Watts, who's here. Have you been introduced yet? You know, well, Delegate Watts is our human computer, and she knows all the numbers and has helped a lot over the years. Has put together transportation policy that we now know in Virginia. She's been very involved in it, along with some former delegates that I see here, Dave Albo and Randy Minshew and David Ramadan. It's good to see that Republicans have a future after office, and you can find gainful employment still. But anyway, we do have a new environment that might help us pass a bill like this, because we're more suburban and urban oriented on the corridor. So if you follow the politics, you see that the Democratic Party did well, moving down I-85 and then down east on 64. I think I can get to Richmond with only going through one Republican delegate district for a couple miles now, and we'll see what kind of challenges that'll bring to us on every new situation. That's why this makes it so much fun. You don't really know what's ever going to happen, and hopefully our trifecta will produce some real results for Northern Virginia and for the state, because Northern Virginia does well, the state does well. Thanks, Katie.
Well, thank you. And I think, and truly, as I had the opportunity over the last 18 months to work very closely with the leadership of both Delegate Sickles and Senator Eben, did you want to add any more, Senator Eben?
Just to follow up, I'm glad that Mark mentioned Delegate Watts, because I'd written her name down on my piece of paper here, because when we started this resolution, SJ 28, it was Paul's idea, I think it was, to make sure that we were analyzing a team approach on how we were going to fund transit in the future of Northern Virginia and expanding areas. And the first person I spoke to in Richmond was Delegate Watts, because she has been at the intersection of transit and taxation reform for years. And we're going to need ambassadors, not just her, but like her, from our delegation to other parts of the state. And as Delegate Sickles said, this is too important to put all our eggs in one basket, so we're going to have a Plan A and a Plan B. Plan A is for larger taxation reform, and with his bill, transit would be adequately taken care of for the future. If not, I'm going to have a bill that will focus on transit alone as a backup.
Fantastic. And actually, I would like to applaud Delegate Watts, a lot of the amazing work and spending a lot of time with our staff to really understand stuff. So I think we give thanks for Delegate Watts. Well, it's always too short to spend time with these amazing speakers, but I do want to have a chance. I think we have a tiny moment for audience questions. And so if we maybe get one or two questions if folks have, otherwise I know that you'll probably want to have some smaller conversations. But while we have folks coming up to the microphone, if there are any folks asking any questions, I am incredibly thankful for the leadership all of you have had in this space. But I think as maybe Paul started us off, this is just the beginning. And so I know all of us in the room, and we still do have a closing speaker, so nobody's to run out the door yet. But is really that this is a collective that we, finding our family and friends throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia and our friends also in the District of Columbia and in Maryland, because especially when we're talking about funding needs for WMATA, that is a joint activity, and we know that there's a lot of people that we need to be talking to. So I am absolutely blown away that we do not have any audience questions. So I would like to thank all of you, and we're going to pause for a photo afterwards. But first of all, Delegate Sickles, do you want to have the last words in?
No, I was just going to offer to talk some more. If you,
I don't know if I was going to say I might get in trouble, but I know that we may have a individual who needs to head out for a meeting momentarily. Sounds like Mr. Smedberg, you've got something you want to add in?
Kate, can I just say something?
Yeah, of course.
I want to say the delegates who are in the room and the regional leaders, I think Glenn Lee here from the district earlier and a few others, you need to talk to our regional partners, your colleagues in Maryland and the district, if you know them. This, again, is going to be a regional effort. The efforts that Senator Eben and Delegate Sickles are leading for us on our behalf are really significant. But yet, we need to have our other partners move in this direction as well. This has to be done collaboratively and as a region. So I know Delegate Sickles talks to colleagues in Maryland, but really put that charge out to you and take that regional approach.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful way to wrap up. So please thank all of our panelists. Let's do a real quick picture. So we do have one more speaker just to really wrap things up. And so, but before we bring up our next speaker, I wanted to remind everybody that feedback is a gift. And we actually, last year, I think we did a wonderful survey that was incredibly helpful and instrumental for this event. So please tell us what you enjoyed and what you'd like to see from the forum. On the screen, look at this, it's already right here, is the QR code scanning you'll for a short survey. I'm pretty sure we'll be sending one out afterwards. Be honest, be sincere. It is very helpful for us to know how we can make next year's event even better. And again, circling back, we have fantastic folks who got here really early this morning to bring out some wonderful things from their transit systems and their organizations. Please go visit them as you head out. Maybe you'll get some stocking stuffers or Hanukkah gifts in there. So finally, to formally close out our event, wonderful energy, VRE's chair and NVTC's vice chair, Sarah Bagley, is going to give us some closing remarks.
Good morning, everybody. I won't be long, but I wanted to thank everyone for coming out this morning to this event. My name is Sarah Bagley. I am the current chair of the VRE board, and I'm the vice mayor of the city of Alexandria, home to the award-winning Dash Network. So shout out to any Dash fans in the room. As you've heard from our panelists today, it's an exciting time for transit, but also a challenging one. But I wanted to just highlight the comment from from Board Chair McKay that it's a doable challenge. And I think that's important because we've talked about it a lot as a challenge, but we've now got something real and tangible, and I'm excited about that. We heard about the landmark year that the Metro system had, how our local bus operators are seeing fantastic ridership, and how VRE is building its commuter rail service of the future. I also wanted to take a moment to highlight the achievement in October was not simply the 1 millionth rider, it was the 100th million rider. So just to be bigger and bolder, our vision for that is to serve our 101st millionth rider in 2026. You also heard a lot of numbers today about Northern Virginia Transit and how many people it serves. And sometimes when numbers are really big, they're kind of hard to get your head around. So I was thinking on the way here, what's a way I could put it in context? So did some Googling, and essentially, Northern Virginia Transit every month serves roughly the same amount of people that saw the Eras tour. So there you have it, people. We're at Taylor Swift levels. We serve almost 10 million people a month, and that's how many people apparently saw the Taylor Swift Eras tour. Finally, I wanted to circle back and close out on something that I thought Ms. Crystal highlighted really beautifully. Not just that transit gets people to all sorts of places, to school, to work, to the grocery store, but it gets them there safely. And I was really excited to hear that in your comments. It is an exceedingly safe way to get around. Randy Clark with WMATA highlighted it's the safest year, most recently on the service. And Ms. Crystal highlighted how many injuries we can avoid by putting people on public transportation. So at a time when sort of the safety of these systems and the value of it is in discussion, I was really pleased today to hear that being highlighted. This is a safe way to travel for youth, for seniors, for everybody. And also just to remind everybody as a closing moment, it also supports our businesses, our regional economy, and our housing affordability, which I'm glad that that was touched on today, the interconnectedness between housing affordability and transit. So we have a lot of big decisions coming in the year ahead. We heard that from our General Assembly panel here and our legislators. So please continue to engage, continue to be advocates, and continue to focus on the positive outlook for transit in Northern Virginia in the year ahead. Thank you so much to the NVTC staff, the VRE and PRTC staff who brought this all together, and to everyone who chooses to make this their mission and to make this Northern Virginia as great as it can be. Thank you all so much. Have a great week.